college football, who has already had a whirlwind offseason. First, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, they canceled their seasons this fall. And now the best wide receiver in the country, he's opted out of playing so he can prepare for the 2021 NFL Draft. That's LSU's Ja'Marr Chase, who's projected to be a top 5 pick in the early mock drafts. His decision could have massive long-term effects on college football. Joined once again by Lavar Arrington. But Marcellus, going to you first. I need to know, will Ja'Marr Chase's decision create a domino effect in college football?
No, it won't create a domino effect just because everybody won't be in the same luxury position that Ja'Marr Chase played himself into. This guy's a top 5 pick, top 10 at worst. So you're talking about that coming off a perfect season with a quarterback who won the Heisman who had a perfect season. Where's the upside in even playing this year? And it's interesting, if you look at his stats, obviously tremendous. 20 touchdowns on 84 catches. Boy, was out there balling 1,780 yards. But his father is interesting, Jimmy Chase, who said his son was locked in. And this was just in August, like early August, this month. His daddy was like, he locked in to play this year, despite the pandemic and everything. And then somebody went to daddy and said, excuse me, sir. Cha-ching. What is your son going to play for going forward? If you know a football player, you know that we all have an odometer of how many miles we could take, how many hits we can take, how many catches are really in that body. And I think this makes the most sense for a guy who's done all he can to improve his stock, to get drafted and to get paid for the same thing he loves doing. So this is a smart choice. And most players are not in this position, including I, wasn't in the same position, so most players won't make the same decision.
I think actually this will have huge ramifications for the future of college football. But here's why. COVID has taught everyone a lot across every industry. I just got here 2 months ago, but to my knowledge, the production meeting we used to host in the morning was in person. Well, now we realize, wait a second, you can host it on the phone. There are a lot of companies across the nation that realize, wait a second, we don't need to have a brick and mortar where people can come into. You can just work from home and still be as efficient. I think football players, college football players, are going to learn a lot too. Wait a second. If Ja'Marr Chase still goes in the top 10 and he doesn't play his last year of necessary mandated eligibility, wait a second. If quarterback Justin Fields at Ohio State doesn't play his last year of mandated eligibility and still goes in the top 10, wait a second. If I can sit out my final year and still go in the top 10, then I have very minimal to gain by going back to college and a whole lot to lose. I think this will have a huge collateral effect on how we view college football. What I love about the show, I can keep it real with y'all because y'all keep it real with me. A lot of players, NFL and collegiately, they're opting out, not necessarily because what y'all reading in the headlines. Oh, I want to stay with my family more. I want to spend more time with this and that. No. They're opting out because they can without getting backlash from the media and from fans. If Ja'Marr Chase were to do this during a regular non-COVID season, you want to know what the blogs for LSU would say? He's selfish. How dare he opt out after he wins all these awards? How can he quit on his team, the same team that didn't quit on him? But now, because of COVID, NFL players and college players, including Ja'Marr Chase, they can hide behind the fact of, well, I don't want to play for safety reasons. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but it gives them the opportunity to do what they really wanted to do, but they couldn't because of backlash. I think if we see Ja'Marr Chase and other guys have successful transitions doing this, then I definitely think going forward, we're going to see a lot more of it.
It's almost like it's a great argument, but you kind of contradict yourself, because I agree with you, Acho, but I disagree in the sense that moving forward, that they're still able to leverage it the same exact way. I mean, if you think about it, they can hide behind COVID. So to answer the question, does it do it for the stars and affect them this year? I would say, which isn't in the question, but this year, I think it'll get people thinking about it as to whether they want to opt out or play if they're in one of the leagues that are still playing. I mean, you look at Ja'Marr, and the one thing you didn't mention is he led the country in receiving yards last year. He won the Biletnikoff. He was considered the best receiver in the land by the award. So you lose your Heisman Trophy throwing quarterback. I think that this is a smart decision by Ja'Marr, because ultimately, do you risk the situation where you could have a bad season with a new quarterback? That's why I left early. I left my junior year. Courtney Brown, who ended up going #1 in the draft, Brandon Short, who was amazing. We had David Macklin on that team. We had 3 or 4 dudes that played in the National Football League for years on that defense that were leaving. I wasn't coming back to show anybody that I wasn't as good as they thought I was in that year where I had dudes getting blocked by 4 or 5 dudes, and I only had one guy to deal with, which was a running back most times. Hey, luck of the draw for Lavar. I wasn't playing that senior year. Wasn't going to do it. Can't get me to do it. I don't think that this will become a trend because of COVID. And moving forward, if a star decides to opt out of a season, he will be based on that. He will be judged and weighed on that. And it could have a bad impact on what he feels his end result will be.
We got to remember that incentives shape behavior. I don't give a damn what the conditions. I don't care if we're going through a pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it. These guys are making these decisions based on the incentives. Now everyone's in this luxurious position as a Jamar Chase, so now everybody's going to even think to make this same decision. A conversation for another day is how I always say there's no unconditional love for the game of football. I try to tell y'all that no one chooses football. Football chooses you. And when you realize you've been chosen, you start to say, how much runway do I have? And in the world where we're looking at a guy who says, I know there's hell to pay every single time I cross those white lines, why not get paid? Why not be in a position where you can, something comes back to you instead of you always having to give a chunk of flesh just for the sport? He's in a different position than I was, than Acho was, maybe not you, Lavar, and that's our point. Coming up in our big story, Kevin Durant is not in the bubble, but that doesn't mean he can't tweet.